Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Mind Muscle Connection podcast. Today's a guest episode with Bryan Boorstein. So he's been on multiple times. He was my old coach. So he's been on many times. So many people are probably familiar with him here. But if not, he's super knowledgeable when it comes to training. And he's just somebody that, again, we mostly do this to just kind of check in, right? And we just kind of let the conversation flow where it goes. So we did talk about some things he's been up to. We talked about resting heart rate and HRV and some things to look at, how to take it. We also talked about his current training, why he's not a fan of full body training and why he keeps switching to that, what he's doing from a cardio perspective. We also talk about his 15, 10, 5 lifting protocol and some things that he's working on, why he thinks that it is beneficial. And I really like that. Definitely something I'm going to look into for myself. So definitely it's an interesting part of the conversation. And then we talk about some other hypertrophy related things, right? We talk about why too much range of motion isn't always a good thing. And then we talk about a 45-degree hip extension and what it can and can't do and some benefits of it. There's also way more information in here. So always a great time with Bryan, great chat. You'll definitely take away a ton from this, as I always do as well too. So hope you enjoy that. But before we dive into the episode, I just want to go over a few ways you can help support me. So one, give me a follow on Instagram, Jeff, HOEHN_. That's where I'm most active on social media, and you can reach out with any questions. I also have my one-on-one coaching, always looking to add motivated clients to the team. So if you're someone that wants to take your body comp to the next level, maybe you want to work on some body recomp, maybe your recovery is struggling, you're just not feeling good overall. And again, you maybe want to run some sort of building phase, fat loss phase, then my coaching is for you. Like I said, I'm always looking to add people that are motivated and want to continue to get better there. I also have my app access membership. And so this is essentially, you get access to multiple 3, 4, and 5 day training programs. I'll probably add in a 15, 10, 5 protocol at some point in time. There's mail-ins and options. You get to track your workouts inside of the app. Also have access to my educational content library and course access, recipe books, and monthly group calls as well too. If you're interested in either of those, just reach out to me on Instagram, Jeff, HOEHN_, or set up some time for a free strategy call, which is also in the show notes. So with that out of the way, let's dive into today's episode with Bryan. Enjoy. Bryan, welcome back on, man. I can't remember. It's been at least a couple months. I feel like it's been a little while. We used to be in contact all the time, and so now it's a little less frequent. Do miss chatting with you all the time, but it is always good to catch up and have a ton of things to talk about when we do. So thanks for coming on, man. We're in the middle of the summer right now. So how have things been going for you? I guess more personal life, more so than fitness, and we'll obviously dive into the fitness stuff there.
Yeah, first thing I'll say is yes, since I no longer coach you one-on-one, we have less communication, but it's great. And I appreciate that we still get to do this every few months and catch up. So I'm a big fan of that as well, and hearing what's going on in your world as well. As far as me, as we were kind of talking off air, I have spent a little bit of time backing off of the Instagram and fitness in my personal life, at least. Still doing all the workouts on my own, and I'm glad to talk about what I'm doing with my training and stuff. But
Real quick though, isn't it kind of funny though for someone that has to you used to post all your videos, you kind of have to explain to people like, hey, I'm still working out, I'm still doing it. You feel like
yeah.
you feel a need to tell people that you're still working out and stuff like that.
Yeah, dude, it's been 10 years of me basically posting all of my training on my story and at least semi-regular post updates. And so yeah, it feels weird to go a week or 5 days at a time and post nothing. But it's still happening. I'm still grinding away. So we'll talk about all the fitness things as well. But in personal life, I've really just been leaning into having fun and embracing life and really finding the balance between all of it. I was kind of talking to you about how my wife has been working with this one company that just had their IPO last month. And so I helped her manage some of that and do some of the day of stock trading stuff, which was really cool for me to kind of learn something a little bit new and unrelated to fitness, which has been all consuming for the last 25 years. So that's been super fun. And then we've been going to a bunch of concerts, a couple late nights out, one really bad night of sleep every month that takes 2 or 3 days to recover from. And
I guess for you, what just are you looking at metrics or you just feel it yourself?
oh, it's both. I'm religiously taking my HRV on the Polar app for the last 5 to 7 years or whatever.
Okay.
So I wear the chest strap, I set up in the morning, et cetera, et cetera. On a normal 27 days a month time frame, my resting heart rate is and my HRV is 1 for an RMSSD or over 200 for SDNN. And after my one night out each month, my resting heart rate will be in the mid 50s, so at least 10 or 11 beats up the first day. And it will take about 3 days for it to gradually work its way back down to 42 to 4 again. And then my HRV will drop to about 90 or 100, and it'll take 2 or 3 days for it to work back up to 130 or 140 again. That's for sure an obvious marker. As far as what I feel subjectively, I don't feel the recovery similarly. I just continue doing the normal things. I work out the next day. I continue my normal structure of alternating weights and cardio for the most part. I try to get as much sleep as I can to make up for the sleep that was lost. And I just get back on with life. And honestly, like subjectively, I feel pretty good. I feed a lot of my HRV heart rate data into ChatGPT, so we have a ongoing conversation where it's analyzing my stuff. And it is, as they are, quite sycophantic. It is enamored with my physiology and the way in which my body is able to recover so quickly from something like that. And so I feel, I guess, lucky in some ways, but I think a lot of that goes into the way in which I've lived life for the last 25 plus years and the base that has been established there as well.
Do you adjust the intensity or anything like that in your workouts, or you just go as normal there?
Yeah, I auto regulate for sure. Like on the day after a big night out, I won't do an interval cardio workout. There's no way my body needs to go into like zone four, zone five. So it'll either be a weight workout, generally not lower body, or it'll be like some zone two. I actually think zone two is probably my preferred way to do it after a big night out because it re-regulates everything and it's like parasympathetic in a way, whereas weightlifting, even if you're leaving some RIR, there's still like a large paras or sympathetic load that comes with weightlifting.
Do you when you with taking both of them, do you find, because like I've kind of heard that, one, do you prefer taking one or the other, or do you recommend taking both if you can? And then I've also heard that resting heart rate can sometimes can lag a little bit more behind like HRV, right? Like HRV is a little bit more sensitive to like stress on the body than resting heart rate is. But in your case, it sounds like maybe it's not if you do see a jump up that quick afterwards.
Yeah, I do. I find them both to go in alignment with each other. As my resting heart rate goes down, my HRV goes up. And that makes sense when you think about what HRV is and that it's the variability between heartbeats. So if your heart rate is lower, then there will be more variance between the beat. And as your heart rate is higher, there's going to be less as it's more like. So yeah, I think that that makes total sense. And it surprises me that I guess everyone's different, but I think they should move in coordination with each other.
That's what I would think too. I've just have heard from some people say that, oh, hey, it's not going to be as like sensitive as HRV, but I've always found it to be fairly sensitive. And again, looking at like I have clients take HRV or not HRV, resting heart rate, and I to me when it always lines up with kind of the feedback that they give me in terms of that.
Yeah.
I don't know if people are just saying that maybe based off like research, or again, I think your actual experience is super important. I just like resting heart rate because it's just a lot, especially if you have an app or a watch or anything like that. It's just so much easier for me to take, and I just feel like it can be a bit more accurate compared to HRV, right? Where we tried it with the Apple Watch and it just can give you some random numbers, but obviously if you have that polar chest strap, like that makes it more accurate. It's just that's like another barrier for people to be
Yeah.
able to do that.
Yeah, for sure. And like having to remember it on taking stuff, whereas the watch is just. But I do think, as far as the way in which resting heart rate and HRV might deviate from each other at some point, I would say the main way I've noticed it is that HRV is of something that's upcoming. Like if I'm about to get really sick, HRV can predict that hours in advance. Whereas I feel like resting heart rate lags in that it won't go up until I'm actually sick.
And that actually, now that you say that, that is more of the example that I've heard. It is more so the sickness, right? You can kind of see it happening ahead of time with HRV, whereas resting heart rate is going to be more on the reactive side of things
Yeah.
there. And so that's
Yeah.
strictly with just sickness.
That's all I've experienced. I find with fatigue or recovery that they tend to go pretty hand in hand, but I'm sure everyone's experience differs a little bit.
And so again, you would use resting heart rate as a way from overall recovery from say training as well too, right? Because again, if it is higher, obviously there's so many different things that could go into resting heart rate being higher, but obviously a hard training session, a highly fatiguing training session would be something potentially, and then that would be something you use for some potential under recovery from a training side of things as well too.
Yeah, I think so. And then I also add that for even people that don't track their HRV, from my experience looking at the data of HRV and then also the internal sense of what my breathing feels like, and maybe I'm just super in tune, but I would encourage everyone to, if you're doing 2 to 5 minutes of work every day, you'll start to notice that some days your breath, it just glides and it feels good, and every breath feels fulfilling, and your exhales are long and extended, and you don't feel like you have shortness of breath in any way or shortness of air supply. And then other days I'll go to breathe and it almost feels like it's going over railroad tracks. As I get to the top of the breath, I'm like, ugh, what's happening here? And then the exhale doesn't feel fulfilling, and I immediately feel like I need more air. And you can assess the way that you feel while you're breathing, and that can also be a guide to how your recovery is as well.
And you've lined that up with taking your HRV, right? So those days that it
Yeah.
feels a little bit more choppy and stuff like that, and you can't. I know what you're talking about. It's like you take that kind of long, like you said, you need to take a. You feel like you need to take a breath sooner, and it's like you just don't feel as relaxed after you take that. You hold your breath for a little bit longer, or again, it's a lot slower. It's like you said, you almost feel like you just need to keep taking it on there, and you've
Yeah.
lined that up with HRV on
Yeah,
those
for
days.
sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. I love HRV and resting heart rate. Those metrics are interesting to me. And like I said, I tell every client to take it. I guess one last thing on this with Apple, they take the average, right? It's like when you look at your number, is it the average typically that it will take that number that it spits out at you on there? That was my understanding is that it was the
What do you mean
average out there.
average over the number, like over a day, you mean?
I
Or
think so, right? Isn't that
well,
how they do it?
yeah, so the number that you'll see in your Apple Health app, if you just look at the HRV section, will be the average of all your readings throughout the day. But what I always do is I go into you scroll all the way down and show all data. And then you can look at every time that it pinged you. So you can see at 8 a.m. it was 132. And then by 4 p.m. you have a 26 or a 47 or whatever. And you can see all the different numbers throughout the day that create that average. And so I think that's almost more telling than the average in many ways because your morning one is going to be the most relevant to your recovery before you start getting into sympathetic situations of life, before you start moving your body around and get the cortisol release of sunlight and all of these things. I think that the morning one, right when you wake up, is going to be the most relevant. And then you'll see the other ones significantly lower throughout the day.
And are you talking strictly HRV there? Or are you saying resting heart rate too? Same thing? Would you say the same thing with that? Or would you
Yeah, I
still?
think resting heart rate's the same too.
Okay.
Resting heart rate follows an interesting trend where I think it actually peaks in mid to late afternoon, and then it starts going down again as you get closer to bedtime, where I don't notice the same thing with HRV. I feel like HRV just continues to go down throughout the day until you sleep and recover, and then it starts going back up again. But resting heart rate definitely peaks somewhere in the mid to latter portion of the day, but then by the evening, as you calm down and get parasympathetic, your resting heart rate will also go down.
Okay, because I'm like, because I always thought that maybe the morning would be a good indicator of just overall stress. Like when you first wake up, what does that look like if you
Mhm.
can't get that number that Apple spits out at you? But for example, the resting heart rate that Apple spits out at me, it says start time 5:44, in time it said 9:59 a.m. That was obviously today, so that makes sense. The 29th though, start time at 5:27, in time 11:34 a.m. there. So is that taking the average or is that just one point in time? Do you know for sure on that? It's
Yeah,
okay
I'm
if you
pretty
don't.
sure that's the average. Go down to the show all data thing. So when you're in resting heart rate, scroll down to the bottom where it says show all data and
Yeah.
then look at all the times that it pinged you.
Yep, it's so it just has one in there, and like I said, that's the number. So again, all recorded data. It says 49, start time 5:44, end time 9:59. That was today, for example.
Weird.
Yeah,
Mine will have multiple, not to bore your listeners to death here. I'll try and do this quickly.
no, you're fine.
But let me see, resting heart rate, just show all data. Yeah, so I had one at 6:40 a.m. and one at 9:18 a.m. And let me see what they were from prior days. Oh, weird. You know what? It's giving me the one from the Polar HRV and then it's giving me one from Apple. It didn't used to be that way. You used to be able to see all the different
I
times that
thought
it
so.
pings your resting heart rate throughout the day. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be doing that anymore.
Okay. Look, at the end of the day, I think with all this stuff, you're looking at your average anyways. I think you could drive yourself crazy with looking at any specific one number. What is it, body fat percent, all these numbers, right? It's like I feel like you could drive yourself crazy. Again, it's I think especially with HRV and this, I think it's really important to see your average and what does that look like? How does the number change based on what your average is? At least I think that's the most important for that.
Yeah, for sure. Throughout the day, your stress is going to be, your number is going to be an average of your stress throughout the day. And then when like it's pinging you in the morning, which like I said, is always probably the most relevant time anyway, because it's going to be before all the stresses start
Stuff
pouring in
happens.
at you. Yeah.
And I do notice when if I don't get to do my meditation in the morning, or again I'm charging my watch for whatever reason, it does end up being slightly higher when I miss that morning one. It makes sense to me
Yep.
there. So
Yep, for sure.
cool, man. What about training wise? What have you been doing there from a training perspective? And yeah, let's love to dive into that a little bit more.
Yeah, it's been interesting because starting in December, I switched to that bro split for the winter, which was great. I really quite enjoyed it. And then my plan, starting in March, when I was going to be biking more, was to switch to a full body program, one full body session every 3 to 4 days, and just kind of run with that, which would leave me a ton of days to do cardio. But every year, I always think it's a great idea to do full body. And then every year, I end up getting to a point after a few sessions where I'm like, why did I decide to commit to full body training? This is absolutely awful. And I end up changing. And that's exactly what happened again this year. I made it about 2 weeks of doing full body training. And then I switched it to upper lower, where I basically just took the full body workout and I didn't add any volume. I just took the leg stuff and did it one day and did the upper body stuff and did it another day. And I then sort of switched that to what would have been 4 times a week. Because if I was doing 2 full body sessions a week, it would have needed 4 upper lower sessions. And I was like, I don't even want to be training 4 times a week right now. So I basically cut out one of the leg days. And now I essentially have 2 upper body days and one leg day. And one of the upper body days is more chest and back dominant, and one of the upper body days is more shoulder and arm dominant. And then obviously the leg day is just like a full leg thrashing. And I do those, I'd say, every three sessions over 7 to 8 days. I'm not really on necessarily a weekly schedule. I just do them when I feel up for it. And I'll do cardio on the in-between days. I'll usually do a bunch of zone two because I love it and it feels good. And then every 5 days or so, I'll throw in a hard interval like zone three, zone four, zone five type thing. And it's been just a really good balance. I've really enjoyed it this year. And I think part of it is that switching to this current training with the 2 uppers and the 1 lower, I'm still maintaining all of my weightlifting sessions under 45 minutes. And that was something that I've never done in the past. I've always been like, oh, if I'm only training 3 days a week or 3 times every 8 days, I really need to get in there and I need to hammer these as hard as I can. But I'm being really efficient with my training. And I've talked most recently on my podcast, Eat, Train, Prosper, about this. But I've essentially been using a 15-10-5 rep scheme on every movement over the last number of months, like 2 or 3 months. And I just love it. I am not getting tired of it. It's perfect. It warms me up and allows me to peak perform while keeping joints in place and or joint integrity and all of that. And so my body feels amazing. And I've just been enjoying the summer months and the training that goes along with it.
When you say more efficient, what do you mean? Like, how do you feel like you've been more efficient with your training?
Yeah, so 15-10-5
Okay.
essentially means that the first set is 15 reps, and I'm generally doing that with about a 20 RM weight. And most people don't do their very first set of the day to 5 RIR. Usually you're like, oh, a few really light reps, then some heavier stuff, then blah, blah, blah. Then eventually I get to maybe my third warm-up set, which is 5 RIR. Because my first set is such high reps, that I can do it at 5 RIR. I literally just jump into the whatever it is, the pendulum squat, the chest press, whatever it is, and I choose a 20 rep max weight and I'll do it 15 or 16 times. The first 10 reps are essentially my warm up. The first five might feel a little weird as I'm kind of trying to find the groove and all that stuff. But by rep 7, 8, 9, 10, I'm in the groove. My muscles are feeling it. And by the time I get to 15 or 16, I'm at 4 or 5 RIR. That's a hard set. When you're talking about 15 reps of something, especially a pendulum squat, to 4 to 5 RIR is not an easy set, but I've warmed up into it as I went. In some ways, I actually call it an effective set. It's bordering on whether it's effective or not, but at least it's not a nothing set. So the first thing I do is 15 reps. Then I take a break and I do 10 reps. I'll usually do my 10 rep set with about my 12 rep max. So that'll be 2 RIR or something like that. Very much an effective set. And then I'll add more weight and I'll do a 5 rep set with probably my 6 rep max. So maybe 1 RIR on it, depending on the movement. For back and delt stuff, I'll probably take that set to failure. But that more or less gets me 2 effective sets in a total of 3 sets. And then I'll do that for one more exercise for that muscle group. And that's pretty much it. So I'm getting through everything really quickly. All the workouts, like I said, are under 45 minutes. And I'm feeling a significant stimulus from it, getting sore the next day, all that good stuff.
So yeah, like you said, a lot of people say you got to train close to failure, but you got to be doing something, even if it is, like you said, 5, 6 reps away from failure, right? Is it the most effective set in the world? No, but you're also kind of doing a hybrid warm up set slash set, right? It's probably adding in a little bit more volume. To me, that would make that type of setup would make more sense than doing like a 10 plus RAR warm up set, right? It's what is that set kind of doing at that point? Yeah, it warms you up a little bit, but you probably could get a little bit more out of it. So I could see that being a way to slightly increase your volume a little bit as well too within that.
Yeah, just being efficient, the goal being efficiency, and then I'm trying to get the most done in the least amount of time. And so by wasting my time, the way I used to warm up would be like sets of five with like first it's like a set of five with a 20 RM, then or something like that. And then it's getting into working sets. But by that point, I've already done three sets with like rest in between and blah, blah, blah. This first set of 15, I get my warm up done and I get a pump in the muscles. It has this effect of flooding my muscles with blood so that I'm like literally ready to go. By the time I do that 10 rep set, like I already have a pump in whatever muscle group I'm training.
Have you noticed a difference in terms of like how your body feels, right? Because I could also see that being helpful, right? You saying getting the blood flow to the muscle, right? You're probably a
Mhm.
little bit more warmed up. You're able to take it probably to the house a little bit more, and again have that muscle warmed up effectively there.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm sure there's like a small effect in decrease in performance of what I could do if I didn't do that first set. But my view on this now is that like the old body back in the day that would do the like 12, 10, 8, 6 stuff, we used to critique that and be like, you're decreasing mechanical tension on your final set by tiring yourself out so much on these earlier sets. But the view I have the last couple years has really been more that the muscle is just a dumb piece of meat and it only knows tension. So if you can do a set of 6 reps to failure with 10% less load than you would have had to have done if you were warming up properly for it and trying to do it like a power lifter would do it, you're actually getting the same stimulus with less fatigue on the joint structures and stuff like that. So I actually love that first set of 15 pumps blood into my muscle and makes me tired because then I can get more out of the next sets without having to use as heavy weights.
Yeah, yeah, that's always interesting. Top right? Is it? We know it's tension, and so do you just if it's like the max of what you can actually do, or is it just again? Do you just is it all about just the tension that you actually place on the muscle, right? What is the
Yeah.
most important? And if you can slightly decrease what you have to do, that probably is going to be a little bit better if again if you can build muscle that way. And it sounds like for you, you're leaning towards that. That is something that it's just tension. It doesn't necessarily matter the absolute weight that you can do.
Yeah, exactly. And that's even mediated by execution as well. We talk about the recently, that's been a big thing in the industry, talking about when you squat, whether it's narrow stance just to parallel, stay in the active range for the quads, or whether you take that wider stance, drop your ass all the way to your calves and use the adductors and the glutes to help you get up out of the bottom. And doing it the more specific, acute way, you're going to use percent of the load that you would use the other way. But it's all about execution. So you can't always say it's better if you use more load. There's more mechanical tension. It's where is that mechanical tension being distributed? And also, what's the impact on fatigue? If I'm having to pendulum squat 165 pounds instead of 110 pounds, there's a huge increase on the total fatigue across the system as well.
Yeah, exactly. Where is that tension going? Because that obviously is super important. And once you start changing mechanics a little bit, that obviously completely changes that there, right? So you can't compare. It's not comparing apples to apples there on that. There again, the execution I think is just super super important and probably missed for a lot of people.
Yep.
So I guess then too, it would be I don't know if you would call it this, but reverse kind of pyramid style training almost in a way, right? Because you're obviously, or would it be
It would
just
be pyramid.
pyramid? Okay, because reverse would
Yeah.
be you start higher and then drop it down.
Yeah,
Then
so you would start with the 5 rep set, then go 10, then go 15, which I also think has tons of value. It's just not efficient for me right now because then I would have to warm up to that 5 rep set in the manner that I mentioned before. So it would now take me 6 sets to complete my 5, 10, 15 instead of simply 3 sets to complete my 15, 10, 5.
I did see on your post, I saw somebody comment on that, right? They said, wouldn't it make more sense to do it the other way, right? And I guess the other way, the rationale would be, hey, you're getting into that heavier set right off the bat, and you can get what we just talked about, right? You could potentially get more out of it, right? That's
Yeah.
kind of the reverse thought on that there.
Yeah, and then also you could, in theory, say that you get more stimulus anyways because your 5 rep set is a hard set, then your 10 rep set could be a hard set, and then your 15 rep set could be a hard set as well. Whereas my 15 rep set is more of this warm up buy-in type thing. So less effective, but it also comes down to your volume needs. Do you need all three of those sets to be to the house, or is it okay that The first one is 5 to 6 RIR or whatever, and then you ramp up from there and you have one or two really hard working sets.
And I just think with all this stuff, man, too, it does also come down to what do you enjoy, what fits where you're at right now, and what are you going to put more into, right? Because again, we could sit here and argue what's best on from a physiological standpoint, but if you don't like training that way, it's like you're probably not going to put your all into it, at least for a long period of time, right? So I think that's just super underrated when it comes to all this stuff, especially with hypertrophy.
Yep.
So then in terms of choosing weight for that, are you basing that as like its own kind of single set where it's, hey, I'm just trying to beat each set from the previous? Does that make sense what I'm asking? Are you going off previous numbers with that in terms of each set, or how does that kind of look in terms of your progressions within that?
Yeah, for the most part, I keep the 15 and the 10 rep set the same, and I focus more on and trying whether I'm improving the 5 rep set or not. But once the 5 rep set improves to a point that there's not even jumps, like I love being like a little neurotic with my jumps where I'll go like 15 set, then I want an equal jump to the 10 rep set and then an equal jump to the 5 rep set. So the way that looks on my T-bar row is that I'll start with 100 pounds for my 15 rep set. And then I'll go to 140, I'll just throw a 45 on for the 10 rep set, and then to 190 for the 5 rep set. And then I got to a point over a few weeks where the 5 rep set got up to 2. And then I was like, shit, now it's not even anymore. So then I moved the 10 rep set to 150. So now I'm doing like 100, 150, 200. So I have these nice even jumps again. But what I find is that usually for most exercises, the 15 rep set needs to be 50 to 60% of the final set. So that 100 pound for my T-bar row is now starting to get a little too easy where I'm doing 15 of them, but I'm like, oh, I could probably do 24 or something like that instead of 20. So eventually I'll probably raise that 100 pound to 110 and then I'll go 110, 155, 195 and then work up from there. So it's not like I have a dedicated strict process to the way it's done. A lot of it's done by feel and then also trying to keep those even jumps.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So just a combination of all those things. It's not just the blanket, hey, I'm just trying to increase this one. Cause I am just curious how how I would think about those progressions. Am I increasing all of them each time? Am I just focusing on increasing one?
Yeah.
Like you said, there's a little bit of feel that goes to it. And then again, we come back to efficiency of training, right? If it can make it easier, it probably makes it easier to load each way to make it the quickest, most effective way to load
Yeah.
to make it easier there.
And then I'll also add, I think, an important element to this, which I think is actually really cool about this rep structure, is that I tend to do the 15 rep set in a much more short biased way. So no
Makes
matter
sense.
what movement I'm doing, if it has a short position, so this doesn't really work on a pendulum squat, but if it has a short position, I'll generally pause 1 or 2 seconds in the short position as a way of increasing mind muscle connection, getting blood flow to the muscle, motor control, all of that stuff. That'll be my 15 rep set. And then on the 10 rep set, I usually won't pause at the short position anymore, but I'll make sure that my form is super strict. No momentum, no chest coming off the pad for T-bar row or anything like that. And then when I go to my 5 rep set, I'll do it in a manner that's, I don't want to call it ballistic, but I'm not focused on mind muscle connection
Mm.
because when you're doing a 5 rep set, you really can't focus on mind muscle connection. You really just have to move the weight. And so I'm not trying to use ballistic form or let my chest jump off the pad in the T-bar row, but I'm also not being neurotic about feeling every rep perfectly or anything like that. And so I think having those three different types of rep performance type execution actually goes a long way in enhancing what you get out of those 3 sets as well.
Yeah, no, I like that because, like you said, on that first one, you could do, like you said, you could because it is a lightweight relative to again compared to the 5 rep sets. You can really focus on, like you said, the short position. So obviously, if you're doing a T-bar row, you're talking, hey, at the top, I'm kind of holding things at the top a bit longer
Yeah.
there, and because again, you're like you said, you're probably not doing that in a 5 rep set. You're probably like you said, you're going to lift that a little bit quicker, and you're probably, I'm assuming you're maybe doing a little bit more lengthened-ish type work
Yeah.
within that, I guess. Then at that point.
Yeah, I'm really letting the length and position dominate the movement structure instead of the short position, which dominates it on the earlier set.
Yeah, no, it actually lines up really well. I actually really like that from that standpoint because then, like you said, you really can hit all three things there. Yeah, that's a really interesting way to think about it. How would that? Let's obviously make sense from a back perspective. What about like a chest perspective? How would you potentially do that?
Same idea, yeah. So obviously there's no short position if you're doing a pressing movement, but any sort of cable movement, there is a short position. And so my main movement that I do for chest now is the cable fly press, which is just so good. And so I'll do that with a pause at the short position and then follow the same idea as the T-bar row. For a movement that doesn't have a short position, say a dumbbell fly, a pendulum squat, really any squat pattern movement or something like that, it's more about keeping constant tension on the earlier sets, no pausing at the top, no locking out my knees, not even pausing at the lengthen position either. Really keeping constant tension on the muscles and really getting as much blood flow in there as I can. And it burns so bad. And then as I get into the subsequent sets, like that final 5 rep set, like I don't want to say I'm bouncing out of the bottom of the rep, but I'm definitely using as much force as I can generate to get out of there. And I may pause for a breath at the top of the rep during that 5 rep set.
What would that second set look like on that then? Just
Yeah, I would say the second set, I probably won't pause at the top of the rep at all and let it unload, but I will probably start to exert more force and maybe pause in the lengthen position at the bottom.
okay, interesting. And again, just so the audience understands, because I think I get it, but when you say it doesn't have a short position, you're essentially saying, hey, so something like a dumbbell press, the top, it obviously has a short position, but it's like you're not getting any tension in that short position, essentially,
Yeah,
right? Is
or
that kind
like
of what you mean?
yeah, and then in a squat pattern movement, like when you're standing at the top of the rep, you're actually unloaded and you're resting. The weight is on your upper back and it's on your midline, but it's not really on your legs like it is in a leg extension.
And then when we think cable press, because I'm thinking, hey, I do the sternal cable chest press. That's different because again, how it's loaded, but you have that tension there at the in that short position there,
Correct. Yeah.
essentially, which would be the main difference with the cable versus the dumbbell.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, that's I really like that way because you really do kind of get to train in all different ways. Whereas if you did a typical loading pattern, you might be missing out on, say, a higher rep set every once. So you may miss out on that shortened position there, like you're doing. And so it's nice to be able to spread things out throughout that. I really like that setup. I didn't even think about it from that standpoint. Cool, man. That's awesome. And then cardio wise, you said big thing. You mostly do zone two just because you like it. You like that kind of style of training. And then outside of that, you're doing an interval session about every 5-ish days or so. You said, what do your interval sessions typically look like?
Yeah, interval sessions now are, it depends if I'm running or biking. If I'm running, it's pretty much 30-second on, 30-second off, or minute on, minute off. I do the same thing on the rower sometimes, but most of it's biking now. And that usually will entail me honestly just going out and just hitting it hard. In zone two, I have to, I downshift when I approach an incline. I make sure my heart rate stays low. I'm never really gritting too hard on the pedals. I'm never standing up on the bike. And when I do my interval days, my goal is pretty much to go out and spend an hour of time in zones above zone two. So that could be like a 2 hour ride where there's an hour of zone two mixed in with an hour of other stuff. Or like the ride I did that I just posted on my story yesterday. I went out and I only did a 75-minute ride, but 7 of those minutes were in zone two, zone three, or rather zone three, zone four, or a little bit in zone five. And I'm not as much into the really proper setup intervals of 5 minutes on, 5 minutes off, 4 minutes on, 4 minutes off. When I'm out in nature, I just want to ride. And if there's a hill, I want to attack it. And I just like to ride hard. And I like to take my bike over to where there's some more hilly terrain or in mountainous territory and just go. Just go feel like shit for an hour and make my heart rate go high and then coast home in zone two. Those are my favorite. Just go into the mountains, crush it for an hour, go ride around, look at the beauty in zone two, and then come home. So that's more or less what they look like. Within that structure, I've actually had some really cool kind of small PRs. There's this hill called Wonderland Lake Hill Climb or something like that on Strava, and it's just over a tenth of a mile. So it's a really short climb, but it's 20 to 25%. It's so steep. And my PR on it going into this year was 55 seconds. And then just about 6 weeks ago, I did it and I did it in 49 seconds. And then just last week, I did it again, or 2 weeks ago, and I did it in 44 seconds. So I cut 11 seconds off of something in a matter of 6 weeks. And ChatGPT says that's the TRT that's really improving my anaerobic performance, which is cool because I'm obviously seeing that in the weight room, which is anaerobic, but seeing it on like a 44-second sprint up a really steep hill is also another cool manifestation of it working.
Which I don't really think of TRT doing anything from a cardiovascular fitness standpoint, right? I don't just think of it that way, but it makes sense that, like you said, it is anaerobic on there. So, okay,
Yeah.
so it sounds, I guess, real quick in terms of that testing, how often Is it just whenever you get there to that and okay, hey, it's here, I'm just going to try it, or are you kind of trying to space it out to where hey, I'm not necessarily going to try and push it every single week, but or what does that look like? Because it just seems like with your cardio, you're not very structured in terms of what exactly you're doing, right? You free ball a little bit, which is fine. I think that's great.
Yeah.
Is that or do you have any sort of system around the testing of that?
No, if there's days I feel good, like really good, I'll be like, man, I think I'll go attack that hill today. But I definitely don't pre-plan and be like, tomorrow's going to be the day where I go attack Wonderland Hill again. It's like I could wake up the next day and not feel like attacking the hill. And so I'm not going to force myself to do that.
Are you super structured with how often you said every 5 days or so? Are you super structured with that? Or if it's like, hey, I feel good, I'm still going to do it, but you just say on average, it's every 5 days or so you're doing something like that?
Yeah, I'd say on average every five. Sometimes if I don't get a lot of cardio in, say I'm traveling or I'm busy with kids' activities or something, and I'm only getting 2 or 3 cardio sessions in that week, I'll make sure that 2 of those are more intense interval stuff, simply because it's more effective when you're time crunched. But if I'm getting 5 cardio sessions in a week, then we're going to be zone two, and then I'll do one harder
It
session.
it seems like with cardio, you can be maybe I'm wrong on this. It just seems like you can be a bit more flexible with how you go about it. I think as long as you do just obviously make sure you're not just going balls to the wall every time and just completely thrashing yourself every single time you do it. Obviously, the more often you do it, but it does seem like you can be a bit more flexible with how exactly you do it. You just need to do it in some form or fashion, and that's whereas weight training again, you probably could do the same thing, but you would probably need to be a little bit more on top of, hey, here's the weight I did last week. I need to kind of watch that a little bit more. Do you feel like that's the case there or?
Yeah, it's interesting because we as we discussed, we have that philosophical approach to progressive overload, which essentially is just observing that you're improving instead of forcing improvement.
Sure. Yeah.
And I feel like that applies even more to cardio than it does to weights. You just can't force progression on cardio. You can't be like, I did this hill in 44 seconds today, so I'm going to do it in 43 seconds this week. You just can't do that. You can do only what you can do. And when you go out for zone two rides, you can't go into a zone two ride and be like, I rode at 15.8 miles per hour with 132 beats per minute last time. So this time I'm going to do 15.9 miles per hour because that might mean your heart rate then goes up to 134 or whatever it is. You can't game the system with cardio the same way. You just kind of have to go out and do it. And then over time, you notice that things are improving. And I think getting away from forcing progressive overload in cardio probably creates a more enjoyable experience as well.
Yeah, and no, absolutely. I've definitely been more on just being flexible with what that looks like and just listening to how the body feels. And because again, like you said, you can't really force it. And if you do, you're just probably digging yourself into a recovery hole that could be tough to come out of over
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Fatigue is so mediated by what your heart rate is doing that you can't just force your body to perform better at the same heart rate. It's gonna go up if it's harder for you.
Yep. Is it pretty hot for you guys right now? Does that impact things for you? Do you adjust your intensity around that or you just
No, it's been great actually. Even the hottest we've gotten so far has been like high 80s. And man, I love heat. I will take high 80s any day over even something that people might consider moderate 50s or 60s or whatever. I love sweating. I love the invigorated feeling of your body just being warm all the time. There's no warm up required. I just get on the bike and go and I'm there. Like yesterday for my ride, I was able to get into zone three within 40 seconds of starting my ride. And sometimes it takes me minutes just to get into zone two. When I was in zone three like that, it was awesome. It was just so fun to be out there in the heat.
I do sweating too because like right now the bike's in the garage and it's been like God, so freaking hot here, dude. But like you said, you can just get going right off the bat. And plus, I don't know, you go out in the heat and you're like vascular right off. That's got to be a good thing overall. Obviously, anything too much is not great, but I agree, it is nice to get out there. But it definitely does impact your heart rate for sure.
Yeah.
Mine spikes up way quicker when it's hot. That
Well,
makes sense.
mine does too. But I think that part of it is that you guys have a ton of humidity over there.
Yes, we do. Yeah,
And the fact that we don't have humidity, it just changes the heat so much.
yeah. How going for you?
TRT, HRT would be the
Or
female
sorry,
one.
TRT.
I guess it is a hormone replacement
Yeah.
as well. Yeah, it's going great, man. I'm a little over 6 months in now, and I would say that everything's really good. The only downside really is that last month I started getting some kind of like red little bumps on my side, a little bit on my upper back, but that's kind of dissipating now. I think there's a bit of hormone regulation that occurs in like the 4 to 6 month mark. And so that seems to be dissipating, which is good. I got some blood work done recently, and I'm starting to see hematocrit and hemoglobin climb just a little bit. So I'm going to continue to be diligent about tracking that and seeing if I need to donate blood at any point. So there's that to kind of consider. I think on my last blood work, I had mentioned that my white blood cell count was like really low, like frighteningly low, and it had been for like two blood tests in a row. But I got that corrected now. It's back to normal this time, and I don't really know. Maybe I was fighting a sickness and didn't realize it last time or something like that.
What supplements do you take?
Really, just I take a half Legion multi, like I'll take half the recommended dose. I take nattokinase for like blood viscosity stuff. I take a bunch of omega 3s, and then I take Timeline, which is urolithin A, which is like the
Oh yeah,
new
mitochondria.
the new thing, mitochondria function. Yeah. So those are really the only supplements I take.
With the Legion, how long had you been taking that? Had you always, and did you just go down to half, or
No, it's
like
been forever. Yeah,
you've always
since I
done it
bought
that
it.
way?
Yeah.
Just because like I've seen some stuff like looking at client like when it comes to white blood cells, like zinc and copper, you know how they kind of play a role with each other and stuff like that. And so like super high zinc for a while can sometimes knock that down a little bit. So I didn't know if you change
Mm.
anything there with that, but I've just kind of seen that there, which copper is kind of hard to get, honestly, in the
Huh.
diet and stuff like that. But it seems like it's gone up for you.
Yeah, all that seems to be fine. My testosterone was much lower on the second blood test, which was really interesting because I took the test at the same time frame to injection. So it was 48 hours after injection both times. And the first time that I got my blood work done when I was 6 weeks in, it was 1170 for my total T, which is kind of crazy high. And then this time it was only 700.
Interesting.
So it went down quite a bit, what, 40%? So I'm not entirely sure what to make of that. I guess I'll have another sense of what's happening with the T levels once I do my next blood work at some point.
I wonder, is there maybe some sort of adaptation to it potentially? And then
Yeah.
you and I both know too. We talked about this with mine, right? Something like I guess that won't necessarily mess with your total testosterone, but again, being a high output person, like your SHBG could be higher, but like we said, that was more free T that would be impacted by that than total. But yeah, but
Yeah, and free seems to be similar both times. So it's
interesting.
yeah, it's so now it's a higher percentage of the total
Yeah.
now because the total is lower.
Were
Yeah.
you going to say something on that? I kind of mentioned the adaptation aspect to it. I didn't know if you were going to say something. I
Yeah, I
kind
was
of
just
cut you
gonna
off.
say that I think there is an adaptation and a regulation piece. Like my body was probably freaking out at the 6 week mark of, oh, there's this new thing. What do we do with this? So who knows if maybe 700 is just the baseline that this amount would put me at. The amount I'm taking is considered low from a general population TRT perspective. It's 50 milligrams twice a week, so 100 milligrams total. And that's quite low. So it could just be that number puts me around 700, which is fine. The other notable piece of the TRT has just been the weight gain, which I lamented on last time I was on here as well, in that I gained a ton of weight initially and I haven't really lost it. It's just, it hasn't continued going up, which is good, but it seems like my new homeostasis is 208 to 2
Wow,
instead of,
it's like
yeah,
190, wasn't it?
85 when I started. Yeah. Yeah.
Dang, that's pretty
So I'm
significant.
up 13, 15 pounds, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Definitely good. You're still hitting your cardio, right? Because a lot of guys won't do their cardio. And I feel like first you gain that weight like that and you obviously put on muscle. I think it's super important to be able to have that cardiovascular fitness on top of it. So I think it's super
Yeah.
important that you do that. How's your sleep then?
Sleep's been good. Yeah, I
Okay.
would say it's improved. I wouldn't say that it's like it kind of comes and goes. The last few nights I've gotten sleep scores in the 90s, which I would say is more rare than not for me. But Apple gives you that score every time or whatever. I would say my average sleep score is probably in the high 80s, and it'll vary between 84 and 96 now. And I would say before TRT, it was probably a few points lower than that, and I would have maybe fewer nights in the 90s than I do now. But it's still variable. It's not like I can go to sleep and just every night I'm like getting a 93 every single night like clockwork. It's still variable. And some nights I wake up once and sleep pretty much through the night otherwise. And other nights I'm up two or three times and I still fall back asleep easily, which is great. But it's definitely not like I'm sleeping through the night regularly or anything.
Yeah. And do you feel like you're well rested and stuff like that or
Yeah, no, for
okay.
sure. I actually feel really good. I would say overall, the TRT has made my overall sense of well-being noticeably improved, like
Good.
10% across the board or whatever. One other really interesting thing that I'm surprised about, and I think is a testament to how effective TRT is for me, is that resting heart rate tends to trend with body weight,
Yep.
which you and I have talked about. So when my body weight was 195 as a pure natural, my resting heart rate was around 44, 45, like mid 40s. And for me to drop it into the low 40s or below 40, I would have to get below 190 pounds. And if my body weight went up to 205 as a natural, my resting heart rate would go 48, 49, maybe even up to 50. But now I'm 210 pounds and my resting heart rate is still 42 or 40 on some mornings. It drops below 40 while I'm sleeping sometimes. And this is at 210 pounds.
Yep.
So the physiological impact of the increased weight seems to be less detrimental to me now than it would have been before TRT. So I think that speaks to simply the way that my body is handling the increased body weight in a much better manner.
Well, I also think it's all the cardio you do too, right? That's going to
But
play
it
a
wouldn't,
huge
no,
role.
but even in the past,
Even
even years
still,
past, if my body weight got up to 205, my
interesting.
resting heart rate would be 49. It wouldn't matter. So now I have even more weight than that, and my resting heart rate is lower. Yeah, I think
That,
that speaks to the TRT as well.
yeah, no, that is good though, right? You're at that higher body weight and you're still keeping that resting heart rate down. That's awesome. Any exercises you've been doing that you've been digging or anything like that? Anything around there?
It's tough because my home gym is, I
You don't
only
have
have
much.
what my home
Yep.
gym has. So maybe instead of new exercises, I can talk about new ways of performing exercises.
Yeah.
Like I really think that the change that I made to my squatting machine, whether it's a hack squat or a pendulum squat or a leg press for that matter, I think there really is something to feet together, toes pointed forward, knees together, and then only going down to about parallel or the point where the knees stop going forward and then reversing direction and coming back up. And I have just been enamored with how effective that is and how little systemic fatigue comes along with it. Because, like I was saying earlier, I can do 110 pounds on the pendulum instead of 165 pounds. And I finish a set and my quads are destroyed, but the rest of me is like, cool, that was a great set. Whereas when I do the full 165 pounds ass to grass with feet wider thing, I finish a set and I'm like, holy shit, I just got hit with a baseball bat. What just happened? And so there's a huge advantage to managing stimulus to fatigue ratio by being a little bit more diligent in that manner. And then I'll also add another thing we've been talking about, I think, on prior episode is shorting range of motion at the bottom of chest movements instead of going all the way until you're getting that deepest possible stretch and you're essentially just stretching your front delt out as much as you can, stopping with your upper arm a little bit more parallel to the ground, even though that's above where you would normally go to, creates a much more effective stimulus on the muscle that you're actually trying to work in that case, which is likely the chest.
What about, would you say the same thing with any pulling as well too, in terms of overhead pulling? Because I find I see a lot of people, they see that they're like, hey, I need to do more range of motion. I just have seen a lot with clients and even myself go just overextend at the top with that as well too. And I feel like that also kind of does the same thing, just the opposite of what you're saying from a chest perspective. Again, don't
Yeah,
shorten it, but don't shorten it too much. But again, I think people overdo that part of it.
yeah, I think you're right. I think if you elevate your scapula so much to a point that you're no longer initiating the rep with the proper depression of the lats, then I do think you're shifting that tension out of the lats and into other areas of the upper back and traps and stuff like that. One thing I've enjoyed doing, and I think I've relayed this to some clients as well, is that in that overhead position, don't even fully straighten your arm. Because if you fully straighten your arm, you're not going to have to initiate with elbow flexion. And if you just leave a teeny, teeny break in your elbow, but you still elevate fully through scapular elevation, then you actually can initiate that rep a little bit more effectively with your lats on the way down. And it really is very subtle. It's just a degree or two of you not straightening your arm. So it still might look like your arm is straight, but what you're feeling is that there's still a very slight break in that elbow that keeps tension where you want it.
I feel like too, could that lead to some shoulder issues over time as well too? If you're just kind of, because I feel like to get to that point where you really stretch overhead, you kind of have to loosen up a lot. I feel like to get to
Yeah.
that right.
Yeah. I'd want to maintain tension, and I think it does lead to better structural integrity over time.
Yeah. But again, I think like you said there, that just comes back to now the overemphasis on range of motion and again working on that definitely helps. I've seen a difference for sure. One thing I do want to talk is the last thing here is, dude, I freaking have I need to get the machine for it, but I've been rigging it up in the squat rack to do 45-degree hip extension. Dude, I freaking love that exercise. And I am so mad I did not program this more for more people over longer periods of time because I just feel like it's such a super effective exercise. And I'm digging it way more than a RDL. And I just feel like again, to come back to the systemic fatigue or whatever you want to call it, is just so much better with this than it is with the RDL and stuff like that. Can you attest to that? Do you like this movement? Am I overrating this movement right now? Or what do you think there?
So you're doing it with the barbell and the squat rack and your hips are
Well,
across the barbell?
right now I'm doing it with dumbbells. I'm holding dumbbells in each hand and I'm going over the barbell
Yeah.
because it's stacked up and then
Yep.
I'm bending over
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Are you securing your feet down or not?
I'm not securing my feet down with this.
Yeah. So you're at a bit more of a steeper angle, whereas
Probably.
if you were more 45-degree, you would probably need to secure your feet in some way. Yeah, I love that, dude. I think that's the best home gym hack for the 45-degree. I do quite like the 45-degree hip extension as well. I find it extremely effective. I don't necessarily think that it's a replacement for the RDL long term, simply because no matter how you load the thing, there just isn't a lot of tension in the lengthened position. You can kind of rig it up where you put it on elevation and you really set your hips so that you're getting a ton of hamstring stretch at the bottom and stuff. But the actual strength curve of the movement is always going to be short. You're always going to have the most tension at the top. And so even performing partial reps, which I've done, where it's a bottom 60% range of motion, you're just raising up until you're at parallel. It's still hardest as you ascend. It's still going to get harder the higher you go up. So that amount of tension on the hamstrings and glutes at the bottom is just not going to be that high. But I do love it, like you said, from a systemic fatigue standpoint. But that just makes total sense because it's not lengthened. So the systemic fatigue is going to be lower.
Okay.
And yeah, I guess that's more or less my thoughts on it.
So it's going to be a more shortened position exercise for the glutes and hamstrings, right? For both of them.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming how you execute it, is that going to determine if it is more hamstring and more glute? Is it 50-50? What does that kind of look like?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's 50-50. I would actually say it's probably more glute dominant
Okay.
because it's short overloaded and the glutes are the one that are going to overload in that position. The hamstrings are going to overload short through knee flexion. So they're not actually shortening in the same way that the glutes are when you get to hip extension there. So the hamstrings are certainly under tension, but it's likely more a glute dominant movement than it is hamstring.
Okay. One thing that I would love is one of those machines to have one of those machines that, and again, I think Cass rigged this up and one where it was like you have the thing at the bottom and you can do it that way as a machine based. I'm assuming the strength curve and everything would be the same, or could they rig it up to where it is more lengthened there?
Are you talking about the one where you hold the cable as you're
Yeah,
doing the
you hold the
45 degree
cable. You hold
tension?
the
Yeah.
cable. Some have ones where you can put the weight on
Yeah.
it and you can hold it at the bottom, right, and do it that
Yeah,
way.
it's still going to be a short
Okay.
overloaded movement. It doesn't matter how you load it. It's going to be a short overload movement regardless.
Okay. Cool, man. I know that we're kind of at time here, man. It was good to catch up on everything. Ton of great information in here. Where can anything coming up on your end, and then where can people find you?
No, nothing too much. I keep putting out weekly episodes of my podcast, Eat, Train, Prosper with Straker, so you guys can check that out. We've been having some good conversations recently. And
Probably sorry to cut you off, but probably a lot
yeah.
easier to schedule that time now that he's back in the States now.
Oh, dude, we do it at 10 a.m. on
That's awesome.
Thursdays. It's so much better than 6 a.m. on Tuesdays.
Yep.
Yeah, so having him in the States has been great. And then my other podcast, Life Reflected, where we talk about getting old and reflecting on life and stuff like that. We actually talk about a lot of fitness stuff too. So we just had a guy on who was training to run a race from LA to Vegas. And so that was a really interesting conversation around dopamine, purpose, and why you do that sort of stuff. And then also the training that goes into it and stuff like that. So that was cool. And Paragon's continuing to churn out programs. We have a core challenge going on right now. By the time this episode drops, the core challenge will probably be over. So
Next time.
so cool. Yeah, next time. But yeah, all normal shit along the way. And if anyone's interested in Brian's program, which is what I do, I'm actually changing it to the structure that I'm actually following. So it was a full body program, but starting in a week or two, which will be
I'm actually going to put
mid.
this out next week, Brian.
Cool. So
Yep.
starting mid-July, Brian's program is actually going to reflect what I'm actually doing with the 2 upper body days and the 1 lower day.
In 15-10-5.
15-10-5. Yeah,
Sweet.
exactly. So if anyone's curious on that, you can come check that out.
I might have to try that out too, man. It's got me some ideas here.
Yeah, you're going to love it. It's great.
Yep. Cool, man. All right. Well, appreciate your time. We'll talk to you soon.
Yep.